We got to break Sariba up. Sariba is a cartel.
We have to own our grid because we paid for it. You had it too long. That's number one. We need to control the purchasing of fuel because we pay for it. We should be in charge of buying it. The fuel companies, you better buckle up too. Jackson Point pipeline have to be reverted back to the ownership of the country. Oh, Mario, you can't tell them how to operate their business. Well, yes, we can. Having this idea that you're going to impose what's best because of what the law tell you can do will cause an uprising in this country that you've never seen before. My children are going to be saddled with the debt of a billionaire so that he can have his name printed on everything we got around here. Because, let me tell you something, this is Dart Island. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Word of Mouth. Today is Monday, the 27th of February, nearing the end of the month. In fact, I want to say tomorrow is the end of the month because it's not leap year and there's only 28 days in February. And for those people who born on leap year on the 29th, they get a birthday every 4 years. I actually have somebody in our family that born on leap year. So yeah, just welcome back. And today is Monday. And we're going to start the week off by just a recap of what happened over the weekend, what took place last week. We were unable to broadcast on Friday and Wednesday because it was Ash Wednesday. So we actually did quite a bit of footage over at the agriculture ground on Wednesday. It was a very good event, very well attended. It was constant in and out all day with people. One observation I made in regards to that. And before I go any further, let me just stop and take this moment to send out our deepest condolences to the Thompson family. And there was obviously the untimely death of Mr. Gene Thompson, and as you can see within all the public platforms that he was well loved throughout the community in many different platforms. So just want to send out deepest condolences and let his family know that they're in our prayers. The thing that I was talking about earlier about the agriculture ground and the fairgrounds and the Ash Wednesday every year, we always see the issue with the congestion of traffic coming into the fairgrounds. Now, I believe, and this is just my honest opinion, I don't know civil engineer, I don't know expert, I don't know. I'm just based on being in that area for the last 20 something years and seeing the growth of that particular event every year and seeing the traffic backups every single year. The government has done many different strategies in terms of trying to alleviate some of the traffic. They had the police come in every year now to block off some lanes, create some lanes. I believe if they just leave it the way it is right now until we can get extra roads or the extra, inlets into the fairground, because the experience that I saw last Wednesday was I believe if the road was just left the way it was without any coning off of anything, I think people would have been able to traverse in and out of the fairground a lot quicker than they currently did on Wednesday. So not saying that they wouldn't still have traffic backups, you would, but I think they should have just let the road, do its job. And because naturally when people see police, they brake. Naturally, when you have cones and redirection and stopping this and stopping that, it creates it creates longer waits. The lanes going into the eastern districts that people want to turn off to go into the fairground would have been backed up naturally. So moving it from one side of the road, putting it on the opposite side, and it didn't really help because I've heard some people were in traffic for 2 hours trying to get to the fairground. Now, again, we have to take into consideration that we've had tremendous population growth over the past 15 to 20 years, and obviously that would have increased the traffic on the road, whether people were going to the fairground or not. It's a holiday. A lot of people go to the eastern districts, and a lot of people live in the eastern districts. So again, but what I would say is that if there was an east-west arterial road, just saying, a lot of the people that wasn't going to the fairground, coming from the eastern districts or going to the eastern districts, wouldn't have had to take that corridor. They could have taken the bypass and been completely off of that road and out of the way. So, and that may have helped tremendously the time that a lot of people had to wait. But that's just my personal opinion. Um, some other things I want to talk about now. The Honorable Kenneth Bryan is on Radio Cayman this morning. I actually called in as usual, and they're talking about the transportation, the traffic, the east-west arteria, and a couple other things. And there are there's a few points that were made that I would like to address, obviously. And some of those things are is I was listening and there's some suggestions, and then I called in and Kenneth kind of clarified it, which I'm glad that I had an opportunity to call in to get that clarity, because I don't subscribe to the idea or any idea that if we're going to implement something to deal with the traffic issues in Cayman, that is going to be at the expense of the Caymanian people. I don't agree with it. I don't even want to have that conversation in a room with nobody, because at the end of the day, we have jurisdictions such as Bermuda that if you're not from Bermuda, you can't even buy a car. So it doesn't matter how many people on work permits in Bermuda, you just can't own a car. You can lease, or you can use a system, or you can find now, I know the argument has been, well, if you're preventing people from getting a car, Mario, you must have some sort of transportation program in place. Well, yeah, maybe that is the case. Maybe that is so. But at the end of the day, how do we go about dealing with the current situation that we have? Because we just can't assume that this thing is going to fix itself, and we just can't assume that it's going to miraculously work itself out, as some people suggest. Now, what I would tell you is this: is that when we look at the system and the infrastructure that we have, it is heavily under a lot of strain due to the population growth and the development and all these different things that are taking place. Now, do we look at how many people we give licenses to? Do we look at what category of work permit holders get licenses? Do we look at the fees and all of the things that surround people getting on the road? um, what I've seen over the past 10, 15 years, in fact probably a little bit longer, is that we've seen other persons who come here and call Cayman home and work and be a part of Cayman. We've seen all of them buy cars, sell cars, use cars, whatever the case is, and they're on the roads, and half of them never driven a car in their life till they came to Cayman. So how do we better deal with that situation? Well, first of all, we limit how many people on work permit can get cars. And when I say people, meaning individuals in different sectors, in different areas of employment. And the labor is labor, right? Whether it's executive level labor or whether it's the non-executive level labor. At the end of the day, it's all labor. It's all work permit holders, right? And there's not the fact that we're picking on anything or singling out anyone. The truth of the matter is that, look, we heavily depend on revenue that comes from licenses and licensing fees and all these different things. We depend on revenue. Our GDP depend on that. Hence the reason why we've never really taken a good look at it. So that's one of the issues that I find is very, very, very disturbing. And I think we need to relook at how we generate revenue. We need to diversify our portfolio. We need to stop depending on two industries only, which is not making enough revenue in order to run this country. Now, one thing we have to be very careful when we talk about certain things, and I don't have any fear of anybody you know contradicting what I say. I really not interested, and it doesn't frighten me. But that's why I say what I say when I want to say it and how I want to say it. And I can tell you, when I say things with a lot of thought process behind it, a lot of research behind it, because I don't like to just fly off the hip and then end up being held accountable or liable for certain things. The reality is that we have a melting pot of cultural differences, and with that, without any proper structure to make sure that those cultural differences don't have a negative impact on our current situation, then we can't expect it to do any better because right now as it sits, there's no structure. There is no plan. There's no design on how that works. We've been unable to digest that sort of influx of people and injection of cultural identities. And because we didn't really have any real plan, because we were focused so much on the revenue that comes from it, right? Work permits. Whole lot of money comes from work permits. That plays a very heavy role in our GDP. Car licenses and inspections and all these things and licensing fees to get your and you got to pay revenue, you got to pay money to go take a test. All of these things add up. So if the government took a very strong look at limiting how many people get licenses in our island, that means they are limiting how much money they make for the GDP. Excuse me. And that's just the reality. So a lot of politicians are not heavily motivated on grabbing that bull by the horn simply because they know that they're going to be lost revenue. Lost revenue means criticism from the general public, and then you're going to have a whole plethora of different things that are coming. So most politicians tend to tiptoe around that or just avoid it completely. We've seen that over the last 2 to 3 decades, which is the reason why we're having such issues now that we're facing now. One of the other things that I know is very, you know, touchy when it comes to competition, which is the cargo port and the cruise port and all these different things. I call it cruise port, cargo port because that's exactly what it is. Because we're using one port for two purposes. And the reality is that they can't coexist. They can't because you can't have one operating at the same time as the other, and that in itself creates an issue when we try to run efficiently. So when crews are in, there's no cargo, and that is the facts. Those crews has taken precedent over the situation. So, but for me, it's just one of those things where we just need to stop dancing around and tiptoeing around the major issues in our country that are creating some fundamental problems, right? Now, we all know that the cost of living is the one thing that needs to be dealt with, regardless of whatever political backlash they get. They need to fix that problem, right? Or they need to be at least actively working at trying to fix it. But because I don't know if there's any magic bullet that can fix it completely, but I know you can definitely try to help the situation currently. Um, looking at the political willpower and looking at the political mileage, and when you measure those things and you add them all up, you find the smoking gun. You find the reason why these things are not prioritized because the political mileage is not as strong as one in the general public would believe. And that's just the way politics work, and we need to change that. And the only way to change that would be to elect young, innovative, out of the box thinkers who are willing to make the necessary changes in order to get this place back on track. When we look at all of our systems that have been self-developed over the past 30 to 40 years, we realize that they're failing at justifying reasoning behind the outcome of anything that it produces. Because when you look at the PR system, for instance, if the small average layman hasn't already figured out that the PR system and the point system is premeditatedly designed to make sure that they are limited on how many of them would get PR. Let me tell you why. First of all, and I can tell you all this without any fear of somebody criticizing me because I really don't care. How many average people in Cayman that on a work permit, that here doing the lower level laboring jobs, can afford to buy a piece of land in the Cayman Islands, regardless of where that piece of land is? Now, the highest point gathering mechanism on that PR system is property, right? Because it demonstrates your willingness to contribute to the Cayman economy, and you've committed to stay the Cayman by buying a piece of land or a house or whatever the case is. Now, That's just one item. Then you got these other items like volunteer work, walking dogs and whatnot. How many people that work on a construction site? And I just choose a construction site. I just pull that one out the air because that's one of the lower level work permit laboring institutions, right? How many people do you know that works on a construction site that go down to Humane Society and walk a dog? I want to know because ain't nobody that stocking shelves at Hurley's or Foster's or Cocorno's or anyway walking no dogs. And how many people that working at the minimum wage, 450 plus 15% gratuity? I don't know which donker came up with that. But let me tell you something. They didn't crunch those numbers properly. But at the end of the day, how many people that working on that level can afford to buy a piece of land so that they can stick it in there in the point system so they can get PR? If we don't realize that the PR system has been self-tailored to accommodate a certain level of individuals in this country, then we are the gullible ones. We are the ones that are not paying attention. We are the ones that don't understand our surroundings. Okay? Yes, do people who work in those areas get PR? Yeah, because they've been here for 260 years. So you just feel bad for them and say, man, gee, you've been here long, like you might as well give to you. The problem is, ladies and gentlemen, is that we need to revamp all of the institutions in this country, all of the mechanisms that supposedly run in Cayman and carving Cayman into what we think it's going to be or what we want it to be. We've heard the phrase, who are we developing for? We've heard that many, many, many times, right? But at the end of the day, the reality is, it's not who we're developing for, it's what we're developing into. What are we becoming? We're becoming an unattainable environment and islands for our local people. That's what we're becoming, right? Because if the PR system clearly marginalizes the lower income people, it has been tailor-made for the higher income people. So that means that the construction, the development, and all the things that we see is not to accommodate the lower level people. But if we continue to believe that this thing is gonna work itself out, is gonna fix itself, we make a sad mistake. The problem is that we need some strong strategic policies that need to be put in place today, not tomorrow or not next election, today, in order to change the narrative, to change the trajectory that we're on. Because the trajectory that we're on is headed directly for national disaster. Because when the Caymanian generation that is now developing an education come back home and realize that they are too marginalized and limited to their participation and contributions that they can make to the Cayman Islands, they're going to stop the thinking and the talking. They're going to start doing. And that's what I fear. 50-50. Because sometimes we need the doers to show up and we need the talkers to just be quiet. And at the end of the day, when we analyze the system that we're currently living in, and we have a strong command of what it is we're living in, and we understand the mechanisms that dictate our quality of life, we have to understand that there are some drastic changes that need to be made. Drastic changes. Now, one other thing that I read over the weekend, where Doctors Express has filed a judicial review on the non-prosecution of the people who were found guilty on that case for Doctors Express, Dr. Lee and one of the custom officers. Now, I read the article and I have to agree. And you all heard me say this on many, many occasions. And I'm not here to beat a dead horse. I'm here to highlight again the double standards in this country. I've talked about it on many occasions in here, the double standards when it came to Dr. Lee. And as a caveat to that, the custom officer got a pass as well, because in order to excuse me, in order to give Dr. Lee a pass, the customs department had to get a pass too, because you couldn't just say, oh well, we're going to let Dr. Lee go, but we're going to prosecute customs. You understand what I'm saying? So So when I go back and I reflect on all the things that I had said in regards to this particular case and Dr. Lee and why he wasn't prosecuted and why he wasn't relieved of his duty a lot earlier than he was, all it told me was that he was being protected from the highest level. Now the DPP office made the decision not to prosecute, and I'm thinking in my mind, of all the people that they decided to prosecute for far lesser charges, because there are people that in the court system today for things that do that pale in comparison to this. Abuse of office is a very serious offense. Being found guilty for unlawful searches and all these things is a very serious offense. You are the CMO, the Chief Medical Officer of the Cayman Islands, and you blatantly, premeditatedly did what you did. But yet you got a governor's party at our house that the governor live in. You got a send-off party. And you see, these are the kind of things that sickens my stomach, because the average person in this country does not have that luxury. That's not a feature on our lifespan. He was protected. He was sent off. He had a party, and he gone. But I pray that this judicial review reverse the decision of the DPP office and bring them up on charges and make them feel the full extent of the law that was created for people like them. Because I have never heard of any case of any Caymanian that was given that kind of blight. So again, we need to fix these problems, right? Now, I only highlighted that simply because I thought it was pretty ironic that I had mentioned this a year ago when it all took place. And I said, watch when he leave this island with no prosecution, scotch-free, no problem. But anybody else would have been in jail. But nobody saw it coming, and then bam, there it is. And now they're having this conversation about it. Now, I was reading some stuff on international energy forums, right? And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because I think that it's imperative that we talk about these things publicly. So hopefully somebody can whisper in the ear of the powers to be and say, "Hey, this was said, that was said. Maybe you might want to have a look at it or whatever." I don't really care how it get done. I don't really care who said what and why they said it. I don't need no credit for anything. All I want to see is the best possible outcome for Cayman, because the solutions are there. Whether or not we want to implement them, that's a whole different thing. There's a lot of national discussion about a lot of very public things. But what is being disregarded and forgotten about is the reality of the current situation for the average person in the Cayman Islands, right? And if we fail to prioritize the situations that are happening that is fundamentally destroying our social environment and our people, then there's only one or two things that are going to happen, right? One, they're going to get to a point where you back them in the corner for so long, and it's going to be a breaking point, and the result of that might not be desirable, might not be what we want it to be, or it's going to be a situation where it becomes very impactful to the society, but under this radar that no one really sees it. And then when it bursts, it becomes a massive disaster. Now, I don't need to tell nobody. I don't need to remind nobody. I don't need to keep saying that we got people struggling in Cayman. How is it that we have all of these profitable institutions boasting all of these profitable things, but yet we have people sleeping in their car? For the small population that we have, First of all, we only got 72,000 people in total, and that includes 34,000 people who are on work permits, and probably another couple thousand people who are on PR. That not even Caymanians. So what that tells you, I was watching all of the posts and stuff that people put up about this concert they had up at Pedro Castle last night or Saturday night, whichever night that was. Um, I think it's Andre Bocelli, I think his name was. Forgive me if I pronounce that wrong. And I know that the the tickets were $1,500 for average, 2,500 for VIP, and then you had some donation packages, whatever. It's supposed to be a fundraiser, right? And my question is my question is, who you raising money for, and where the money going, and when it getting there, and how much you made? That's what my question should be. That's what the government question should be, because they use Cayman's oldest historical site to hold the event. So my suggestion is they need to find a way that what a charity before, who before did they get it, everything good, and then if that's the fate, then fine, by all means. But that's just the suspicious bug in me. A lot of people don't really pay attention to a lot of things that's happening around here, but they need to start doing that. Now, last week, you all heard me speak about the 3 megawatt increase that OFREG approved for CUC to put on the grid, right? Now there is a there's a goal that they're trying to meet. I think it's, and I stand to be corrected. I think it's either 20 or 25 megawatts in total, I believe, by a certain time. And if that's the case, we must expect that there are going to be some increases on that renewable energy surcharges on your bill. Now, again, these are the areas that we need to constantly pound. These are the areas that we need to get to the bottom of, right? We need to do these things. So, again, when we have the conversation about these things, we need to make sure that we ask the right questions, and we need to make sure that we get the answers so that we can get to a point where we can formalize a solution so we can move forward. And that's why I always bring it up. That's why I always talk about it. That's why I constantly make sure that it's a topical issue. Now, I know for a fact that there are many things that happen in Cayman that you'll never hear about. Oh, you never hear about them because certain news platforms are designed to protect certain issues and certain people. And I laugh at it because when they do decide to criticize someone or something, they go full hog at it. You'd be like, gee, where you been? But then when it comes to certain issues and certain people, they're like little mice. They don't say a word. Zip, quiet, right? And when I go back and I analyze some of the things that was given away in this country by certain government parties, I just die with frustration because I don't understand how could they have taken some of the decisions that they have made that have now saddled the rest of Cayman and generations to come with the debt and the issues to try to change some of the system that is currently taking place now. Um, and when I say that, speaking directly in regards to the road development, the port development, um, we got national housing, we got all of these things that's supposed to be, carving Cayman into this identity that we should try to embrace. But nowhere in that I see the Caymanian dream being realized to anyone. It's like it's like a minefield of servants who are catering and working hard in order to deliver some sort of a paradise Cayman, or Cayman paradise for those who can afford it, and those who can attain the necessary job and the scope of work that they can put themselves in these situations. And I see it all the time. You know, now that we've finally stripping away all of the restrictions and all of the stuff. I just saw where it was announced this over the weekend where They're moving all of the LFT and the COVID testing and all of the restrictions that they had, right? And I still ask the question: when are we gonna sit down and have that real conversation now about how many people the vaccine affected? Because I can assure you, the vaccine have adversely affected a lot of people in the Cayman Islands. Now, that running on the radar, nobody not having that conversation, right? There are a lot of people who are suffering with their health, because of that vaccine. But yet, our stupid government can still tell you to go out and take a booster for something that didn't work for the first 2 shots. And you got some people running around here with their head so far in the sand, they got 2, 3 boosters and can still catch COVID. I don't understand why our government have fixated on the position to mislead people. COVID-19 vaccines that have been offered to people does not work. It does not prevent you from getting COVID. It does not prevent you from getting sick. And there are a lot of people who are experiencing a lot of health anomalies after taking the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccine, which was shoved down our throat by our government in so many different ways. And the poor work permit holders, they never had a choice because they went and legislated a law that made them take it or go home. That's the country we live in. The best ran banana republic on the planet is the Cayman Islands. You hear what I tell you? Believe me when I tell you, people are not really paying attention to what's really happening. I want to know when somebody in government is going to go to the death registration office, collect all of the death certificates, go through it, look at the cause of death, look at the reasoning, look at the ages, and don't tell me that something not wrong here. And look at the time frame. Something needs to be done. And nobody not talking about it. Nobody is talking about it. So when the merchants of the vaccine came knocking at my door about you, listen, I told them that, well, first of all, I told them that my 2 children wasn't taking it. I don't care who took it. They're not taking it. And they better not be marginalized because they chose not to or because we made that decision. Because I have friends, some who are dead now after taking the vaccine. Now, I'm not telling you that the vaccine killed them, right? And I want to be very clear because you have some idiot listening to this saying that I said the vaccine killed people. But I don't know if it did or not, or it didn't. But I do know this for sure. I got some friends who are currently in the ground after taking the vaccine who were perfectly healthy prior to. That I can assure you, those are facts. So I don't know when we're going to sit down and finally have the conversation and stop this stupid campaign about vaccine boosters. The vaccine does not prevent you from getting COVID. It does not prevent you from spreading COVID. It does not prevent you from getting sick from COVID. COVID-19 is just a version of the flu. Everybody knows that now, including all of the health associations that were pushing this narrative. They're not telling you to get in the US, they're not telling you to get COVID vaccine no more. They're telling you to get the flu vaccine. They've gone back to the word flu. And Wayne Pannon, let me tell you something. You should be ashamed of yourself. You should be brought up on charges for forcing people by law to take a vaccine or go home or don't get a permit. That was wrong. And all the government people who signed off on that, I know we're all wrong for that. Trust me when I tell you. Ridiculous that we chose that path and we took that path, and we still got idiots running around here about, did you get the booster? We got clinics that are being satellite clinics from HSA setting up about do the booster and then about children. Have we lost our mind? How many people in government? Dr. Lee smelled the rat and he took off. How many people in government and the ministries that willing to come out on a public platform and say that COVID-19 vaccines, Pfizer and Moderna, is effective and works? How many of them willing to say that? I bet you not one of them willing to come out and say that. They'll come out and say, I took the shot, nothing happened to me. Okay. That's about all they'll say. You know what you do now? Ask them how many of them took the booster and how recent they took the booster. Find out from them now how many of them took the booster. And how come you not got no more campaign about $100,000 for people who take the vaccine? How come you not got that no more? Because that in itself too was borderline criminal. I don't know why they're not investigating that. But nobody not having these conversations. People sleeping in their car on the beach, bathing in public bathrooms with their children. No money to put food on the table. No money to pay for a roof to put over their head. But yet we're gonna have a gala. We're gonna do all of these things funded by government, and we got people suffering. And they're not suffering because of their own mechanisms, not 90% of them. They're suffering because of the system in which they got working. You got some people that live beyond their means, yeah, and they fall on hard times. We know that. But what you tell the person that got 2, 3 jobs that still can't make ends meet because the cost of living so high? What you tell that person? You tell them that they're living beyond their means though? You tell them that they're not doing enough? You can't tell them that. So there are a lot of things that need to be addressed in this country that they're just being tiptoed around, kicking the can down the road. We've talked about them here on a regular basis. We almost sound like a broken record over here because I never stop pushing and creating pressure until something happens, until there is some sort of change. And we need to make sure. I heard that radio ad. Excuse me. I heard a radio ad on the way in here, driving in here, from the Department of, I guess, Commerce. And anyway, it was on Radio Cayman saying that any job that is beyond 30 days now have to be advertised through work and whatever. Now, I I don't understand because jobs being advertised never helped Caymanians get jobs in the first place. I don't know why they feel like it's going to help them get jobs now. Now, remember this, ladies and gentlemen. 90% of the jobs that are on temporary work permits are not people in the executive level. No, no. That's so the government. I don't know what their objectives are. Right? I don't know. A system that has been designed by itself and ran by itself, which is like the financial service industry and all of those big institutions that come here and set up shop and make hundreds of millions of dollars every year. Why is it that we haven't been able to identify our harvest of people who have the educational ambition and everything to work in these institutions? Why haven't we been able to carve out legislation that ensured their participation on the highest level? We haven't done that because we keep letting them write the script on how it should be done, on what they expect and what they want, not realizing that they've tailor-made every single high-end job for their buddies. Telling you, that's a fact. That might be a gorilla in the room that nobody wants to take out, but that's a gorilla in the room. That's a reality. And what really blows my mind is when they're having all of these galas, right? The only gala that I really support 1,000,000% is the ones for research and development for cancer galas and all those. Those I support 1,000,000%, right? Because cancer don't have an identity who it chooses only. It is a very universal disease. It doesn't pick and choose. There ain't no double standards with cancer. She take out everybody. So I support galas for cancer and research and development and survivors and what. Those I support 100%. But you see these charity benefits and these charity galas and these about I feed our children and all this foolishness that's going on in Cayman and around the world, but I can only focus here because this is where I live. That's a pile of rubbish, especially for Cayman, fifth largest financial center in the world, one of the top tourist destinations in the world. A very strong place for people to come and enjoy life. We have created a paradise for inward bound investment investors and people. But yet we have failed at one of the fundamental things in this country, and that is to look after our own people. And we okay with rich people, wealthy people who get wealthy and rich in our very system. We are okay with them having annual galas for $10,000 tables, put on their best and their diamonds and their everything, and that's fine, you know. I don't have a problem with them dressing up and doing these things. And they're doing it at their expense, at the sympathy of the charity card. Oh, well, I came in and I bought 2 tables. Oh, yeah. Where you get the money from to buy those 2 tables? Where you get the money from? Where that money was made? Right in our jurisdiction. We got retired equity lawyers from certain law firms in this country who can retire now and afford to go buy vineyards and buy all sorts of stuff. And that's fine. Every man shall reap what he sow, and everybody should be able to enjoy the fruits of their labor. I get it. I don't have a problem with that. What I have a problem with is that we have fundamentally refused to fix the system so that we can have a institution or institutions pat themselves on the shoulder every year, 2, 3 times a year, saying, well, we did our share, we did this, and we fundraised this, and then they get these photo ops with these big fake checks. So we donated this and we donated that. Donated what to who and for what reason? Where they made that money from? All they're doing is giving the money back. And as opposed to raising money to feed you temporarily, why you don't try and put that money in fixing the system? Why don't change some of the policies and the institutions that made on the rich so that the wealth in this country could be properly distributed amongst those people who have the educational power and the ambition and the foresight to be a part of it. But because they don't play ball by your rules, they're not allowed to climb that corporate ladder, you see. Because once that person that don't play ball by the rules get to the top of the corporate ladder, they may change the rules. They may be the person that is now about to break Pandora's box. So they never able to get to that point unless they have already demonstrated their willingness to be a part of the system. Hence the reason why I coined the phrase token Caymanian. A token Caymanian is the person who have allowed the abuse of themselves to get to the top and they're not changing anything. They want a system to stay the same. And that happens more times than I like to admit here. So for all those token Caymanians who know who you are, you know who you are. You let that set on your subconscious. Let that be your guide, because there will come a time, and there will come a time when all that will change. All that will change. People don't see it yet, but it's coming, and she coming. So when we have conversations about these things, people be scratching their head. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? You're talking about a rigged system designed specifically to trickle in. And when I say trickle, I mean trickle in one or two, because they're not jeopardizing the possibility of that system ever changing, ever. So, and that's the reason why I speak all the time on these topics, and this is why when you hear me talk about CUC, it's the same thing. Nobody wants to break the system that is currently providing an unimaginable wealth for certain people, small group of people. And I don't have a problem with nobody getting wealthy, you know. I just have a problem where you don't want a person at the trough eating and everybody outside starving. I don't want to eat to see much you eating. I just want to make sure that I eating. I want to be at the trough too. I don't need to be in the middle. I could be at the end of the table. I just need to be there. And that's the problem that I see with a lot of the developing situations that are constantly pounding the confidence of inspiring persons who go off and get a good education, come home and say, boy, you know what, now I'm gonna apply myself and I'm gonna implement my degrees and my learnings and come back and make a good life for myself and come down. and come to realize that the system has been rigged from day one to make sure that if you participate on that level, if you on that roster and you get called up to bat, that is because you have already subscribed to the system that have been marginalized in Caymanians for a very long time. A lot of people don't want to hear that, but it's the truth. It's the God's honest truth. I don't know if we got in the comments, but one would imagine. Um, all right. Well, Jonathan, boy, I've been missing these last couple of days. Did you see the pictures I show you on Facebook? Still think that the compass, what? First of all, the pictures you showed me on Facebook isn't relevant to our discussion. Let me make this very clear. Putting a bridge in the North Sound won't solve the problem. It will only create more problem. Putting an overhead bypass will fix the problem every day of the week because we can't go underground, right? We can't go underground. We can't put no tunnels, right? We gotta go overhead. That's only how we're gonna fix these bottleneck situations. But suggesting putting a bridge in the North Sound, that's not a solution. And that don't that anyway. That's your opinion and that mine. I think we both gonna stick. We gonna both stick to our opinions. And the pictures you showed me don't prove anything. Don't prove anything. So bridge idea is not gonna work. And the overpass don't fall right back in anything. I'm reading your comments now, but you created your own idea where the overpass would come, which would be a failure. But if we do it the way you think it can be done, yeah. And the same thing with your bridges can't work. You want to put bridges in the North Sound to do alleviate traffic? Why would we go into the untouched North Sound to put bridges to alleviate traffic? That don't make no sense. Let's put all of our infrastructure on the already current areas where the road is already existing. We just need to go overhead in all the bottleneck areas. We don't need an overhead direct to, and then we can do monorail systems. That's the direction we need to go. We got to start planning for these 5 to 10-year solutions because I can assure you, if you put a bridge in the North Sound, 15 years from now, you're gonna need another bridge and then another bridge and another bridge. No, let's put something in place that can be for 50 to 100 years. That's what we need to be doing. So, Meisner Marine, out there, that Royal Watler, prime example. You want me to show you a picture of my idea? This is why you need to use your imagination. Put it in your head. Show you a picture. So pictures is what fix things now? No. I mean, if you want me to do a drawing, I could do that. I don't have no problem. But that don't make any sense. Well, all right. What's expensive? Try going in the North Sound. Anything marine based is expensive. Anyway. You need to do a little bit more research on that bridge system you're talking about, because I'm not really worried about the cost. I'm not worried about that. All I'm saying about the bridge system, Jonathan, is this: if you want to go and disturb the North Sound to alleviate traffic, there's only one reason I would consider disturbing the North Sound, and that is to put a deep water channel to connect all of the already dredged areas to have a safe harbor for cargo, which provides food and medicine for our country. That would be the only reason why I would consider disturbing the North Sound. But to alleviate a bunch of work permit holders who shouldn't have a driver's license, I think not. Put some overheads on the bottleneck areas, put them to and from the destinations where people are trying to get, as opposed to the branch offs to the little small side roads. End of story. And for God's sakes, we got to stop letting people build development on the bypass. That's why it's called a bypass highway. So you don't have any interruptions. But of course, you got government, they got friends that own land that, oh, well, I need to get this exit. And then they don't make them put proper infrastructure. They got to have merger lanes connecting outlets and all sorts of stuff at their expense, not the government. And I want to see something. Do as I told you now. Go and look at the gazetted roads from Hearst Road to Frank Sound. Go look at the gazetted roads. It's there. Then look at all the land that it goes through and the land surrounding it. Go and look at the land acquisitions. Go find out when the land were purchased and find out who purchased them. And then now go down to planning and find out who's submitting plans to build developments on these said lands after the fact. And you will find the culprits. You find them, they're right there. Easy to find. And now they're building plazas and all sorts of stuff up along the now. Excuse me. But these are the kind of conversations we need to be, having on a more regular basis. The small people in this country is being pushed out. The backbone, the people who have held this place up for decades are being marginalized and pushed out. I don't care what nobody say. They could say whatever they want. Every time we get up on a podium to have anything in this country, and we haven't fixed the problem for a woman sleeping on the beach with her 3 children, we got problem. We got major problem. Everything need to go on pause until we can fix that. Until we can fix the sustainability of our people. That need to be fixed first and foremost, prioritized. But nobody not really talking about that. And me and you, Jonathan, could talk about bridge and overpasses until we blue in the face. Whether my opinion is better than yours or whether yours are better than mine or whatever the case, it don't matter. What we should be focused on is the things that are doable, the things that we can get done. And I can assure you, they could bring in a civil engineering team and put an overpass starting from Lion Center, from where old Lion Center, well, the only Lion Center is, where if you're not going Prospect, Hurley's, or Red Bay, or any of those places, that overhead bring you right back down off of spots. And then you go straight into the Eastern Districts, and then you got the East-West Arterial bypass. That would be a tremendous help in that area. And then all of this stupid discussion about, oh, well, you're going to build an East-West Arterial to bottleneck everybody at Hurley's. All you got to do is put in a network system of overpasses that take people to and from the destination they want to go. So anybody who going into the Hurley's, Grand Harbor, Red Bay area don't need to get on the overpass. Only the people who are going into the Eastern Districts. It's very simple. But what we're going to do, put a bridge in the North Sound so we can carry them to and from. And then what happens when the population and the development growth get to a point now where then all of a sudden now we need more bridges? We just want to keep building bridges? No. There are a lot of other things we need to do as opposed to even building more roads. And that is to bite the bullet and just say, look, this is how we are going to implement things in order to accommodate the infrastructure that we have. During that whole CPR petition thing, I brought up a very interesting point called carrying capacity. Now I hear them talking about it now all the time. Oh, what's the Cayman Islands carrying capacity? What's the capacity? What's the capacity? We already maximized that. And now we are reacting. We react and trying to build infrastructure to accommodate. We don't. And listen, and first of all, if you put a bridge, I can say this from a humor standpoint. If we put a bridge in the North Sound, you gonna have traffic jam because you gonna have every Filipino and every Nepalan, every Indian and every Jamaican Cayman fishing off inside that. So believe me when I tell you, we're not doing no bridge in the North Sound. Let's get that. Let's scratch that idea. But at the end of the day, when we look at energy consumption, we look at food consumption, we look at all of the things that we have to consume by compulsory. There's no real emphasis coming from government on how to curtail any of the cost of these things. Government likes to kick the can down the road because it gives them better political mileage. And we are the ones that suffer political whiplash because we the one that feel the full blunt impact on how these things affect us. Their actions creates our consequences, right? And the reason for that is because we don't get involved enough. We need to start getting involved. We need to start making our voices heard. We need to start making them know that, look, we're showing up. You're not just doing anything that you feel like anymore, sticking it down our throat, and we got to digest it and then become our permanent consequence, and then we end up sleeping on the beach and bathing in the bathrooms and eating in the bush or whatever the case is. And if you want a harsh reality of what's going on in Cayman, let me just tell you all this right now. Take 7 days out of your 1 year schedule and go to every single bar and restaurant from Norwest Point all the way to Blue, what I place up in Dr. Shedder Hospital called Blue something, right? And all the way to Tuca on East End, straight into Northside. Well, Rum Point not open yet. Just take a time and just go in them. Don't buy nothing. Just walk in there on peak hours on every one of them. West Bay Road straight down. Walk inside of them. Take a good look around. Take a good look around. And when you finish doing that, then ask yourself the question, what are we developing into and for whom? And you will see. So believe me when I tell you, we need to pay attention to what's going on in this country. We need to pay attention. We need to put a moratorium on PR and statuses in this country today. We need to be able to properly digest the already cultural differences that we have here now. We need to stop letting people come here, calling Cayman home, and then trying to change Cayman into their old home. That got to stop. Because we've already allowed you to come here. We've already allowed you to subscribe to being one of us. And then when you get that, all of a sudden now you want to change us into where you ran away from. That got to stop. That need to stop. And I heard on the radio this morning, Kenneth Bryan was on and Dr. Frank called in. And to my disappointment with Dr. Frank, because I found that very strange coming from him, when he said, well, we got to be careful how we implement certain things that will affect the workforce and the labor force. And because, we depend on labor and we got to make them happy too. I don't disagree with any of that, But he was suggesting that we should implement things that will further marginalize and saddle Caymanians with debt in order to accommodate an infrastructure upgrade that have nothing to do with us, because we are not creating the impact on the infrastructure that requires new road. The Caymanian people not the ones responsible for that. We are responsible for allowing it to get to a point where our infrastructure have sadly hit the pause button while our population growth have skyrocketed. So again, he was suggesting that we need to take this in. As I mentioned earlier, in Bermuda, if you're not from Bermuda, you can't even buy a car, much less land. Now, I'm not suggesting that that's the model we want to go after. I'm just simply saying that there are things that can be done to mitigate some of the strain that we're having on our infrastructure. But until government can diversify and figure out other ways of generating revenue, we're going to always grant as much licenses as we can, grant as much people who want to come in and take a test to get a driver's license. We're going to continue to grant as much work permits as are applied for. We're going to continue to do these things because every one of those things have a line item called money. They all generate revenue. If you look at the Cayman Islands revenue stream and you go look at how it's generated, you'll find that all of those areas are the same areas that are creating the fundamental breakdown in our social environment. Because let's just speak hypothetically. Let's just say that work permit holders, no work permit holders, weren't allowed to get driver's license in the Cayman. Well, to use their overseas driver's license or get a local driver's license in the Cayman Islands, and they had to use a public transportation system. Now I know, stick a pin for a second, I know we don't have a major transportation system in place. We have a micro transportation system in place driven by the craziest drivers in the world. But yeah, I get it. Excuse me. But let's just stick that pin for a second and say that we didn't allow anybody on a permit to have a driver's license. Our roads would be ghost town. Our roads would be a ghost town. We would have no problem with traffic. And if you think that that's not real, think about this. At 12 o'clock today, go on the road in Georgetown. That's the lunch hour. Lunch hour meaning people whom are at work are now on a lunch break and they get in their cars. And that's not everybody, That's a small percentage. But they are on a work permit. They get in their car and they go to get lunch or they go home or do something they got to do during their lunch hour. They're on the road and the roads are bumper to bumper during that hour. Morning, school. So even on Saturdays now, even on Saturdays, don't venture out on the road after 12 p.m. in Georgetown, West Bay Road, even the Hartwell bypass. It's bumper to bumper. You know, it's funny when we talk about, oh well, Sunday trading laws should change and blah blah blah. But Sunday is the only day of the week that you can actually get in your car and traverse the roads without any real issues with traffic, unless there is some road work or an accident. That's it. But nobody not having this conversation. So I don't know what the perfect pivot will be, but I do know that something needs to take place, and it's not going to be popular. It's going to be unpopular, and that's fine. Most good things are unpopular. Believe me when I tell you. So, do we find the political willpower from politicians who are looking political mileage in order to get political favorability to be reelected? I don't know. I think that's the elephant in the room. And when we talk about all of the systematic failures in many areas in government and many areas in the private sector, we then have to ask ourselves the question: well, who the guardians are? Who are keeping watch of these things? Because traffic wasn't a good yesterday, woke up this morning and it was bad. Traffic been a problem for the last 20 years. Cost of living been a problem for the last 40 years. Proper health care and different things and all has been a problem. Education has been a problem. So why we not got no champion of any of these industries? None, not one, not one. So I don't get it. I don't get it. I was having a conversation the other day, and the dot KY. Now I'm not picking on the dot KY was given away, so we don't own that no more. GoDaddy own that. Just so want to know. But these are the sort of national treasures that we have let slip through our fingertips because we didn't have the foresight or the trust in our own people to champion some of these causes. Probably maybe it was a political um, self-serving reason why that was given away. But these are the sort of things that nobody talks about. Nobody not having that conversation. Nobody not talking about these things that could have been, kept as a national treasure. Nobody talking about a grid that is owned by a monopoly. Nobody not talking about that. You realize that no other distribution of utilities can distribute on that grid without CUC's permission. And then they formed a subsidiary company called DataLink who collects the revenue from it. You guys really understand what's taking place? And last but not least, before I sign off for today, Monday, and I was going to bring this up earlier, but I left it for the last. Can anybody explain to me, please? I don't need nobody from CUC because they paid hired guns over there. So they're going to tell you what They're paid to tell you. I want to know. Excuse me, I have a little cough. I've been trying to keep it in all day. I only cough like 3 times. But listen, can somebody please explain to me? Actually, you know what? I invite anybody from CUC, any of their technocrats or their experts or their well decorated veterans over there. Please explain to Mario Rankin and the general public, why is it law that I have to be connected to CUC when I build a house? Planning do not give you an approved drawing to build a house, a dwelling, commercial, anything, unless you have a connection to CUC. So on one hand, we're telling everybody that we need to go green and we need to be more, environmentally conscious and we need to reduce our carbon footprint, right? That's what they're telling us. But if I want to build a house on a piece of land that I own right now, anybody, if any of you want to build a house on your piece of land right now, in order to get your plans approved, you have to have an electrical drawing that states you connecting to CUC. And when it's all said and done, you can't get a certificate of occupancy, which is a CO, unless you have a CUC meter. Why? Why is it that I can't build a house with planning approval that I run in completely off the grid with no wires overhead or underground connecting to my house other than my solar or whatever alternative I choose to use? Or better yet, let's just say I choose not to use any current. I choose to not use anything on the grid. I can't build a house legally on my plot of land. Listen to me good. You cannot build a house, a full house, legally on your plot of land without being connected to CUC. Now, Anna can't tell me there's something wrong with that picture. Because if my father or my mother or my uncle or my sister or my brother or even my children leave me a piece of land and say, or give me a piece of land and say, Mario, that's yours. And then I go out and I take my hard-earned money and I get an architect to draw a plan with no electrical, well, with electrical, but no CUC connection. I can't get that plan passed. That will not pass planning department. So I am being refused a dwelling on my land because I refuse to use CUC. So you only can't tell me something that's fundamentally wrong with that picture. Tell me why. Now, I could buy a houseboat, drive it into any marina, turn on my generator and live there until I did. Nobody says a word about that. But is that the standard of life that the average Caymanian want? No. That's a standard for another culture that does it here all the time. We got marinas filled with boats plugged in to their dock facility and they live on the boat. They own the boat and the only overhead they got is whatever energy and water they use and that slip cost. That's it. They don't contribute nothing to this economy, but they live here. Again, these are the things that nobody don't talk about. But I must be forced to use CUC on my house by law. I can't get a certificate of occupancy unless I'm connected to CUC. Tell me why that is. Somebody need to explain that to me. So we need to change that. So if we want to gear people mentally and go in alternative, I can't go to planning, submit a plan and say, hey, here's my plan to my new house. Well, how you powering it, Mario? Well, I using all solar on my house and batteries. Here's the plan. I got that all drawn. And can you submit that? Can you review this and pass it to me so I can get on my way? I'm not digging no tunnel, no trench, and I don't want no overhead wires going to my house from no CUC. I want to run and generate my own current. End of story. You can't get a CO, my friend. So these are the sort of things that nobody talk about. Nobody don't point them out. Nobody don't want to have a conversation. When I spoke to a couple of people privately over the past couple of years, talking about the financial service industry, which is one of our largest pillars, who employs a large sector of our middle class and blah blah blah. Great, awesome. I support it 100%. So why is it that the government only collecting licensing fees and renewal fees and work permit fees from that industry? Why the government don't put a sovereignty in there? The 25% of the $3 trillion that is being managed on these shores every year that goes into the pockets of the service providers, why are we not getting 3 to 5% of that goes into our sovereignty that takes care of the welfare and the well-being of our people, so that we don't have some tap yourself on the shoulder gala every goddamn year saying but we helping the children? That's the hypocrisy that we willing to sign up to. That's the cost that we're willing to exchange. And they're not going nowhere. If you implement that tomorrow, they're not going nowhere because it don't affect the customer. It only affect the person who is collecting. That's it. But as opposed to them having a gala every year, fundraising from their rich buddies, they can just contribute it directly through a sovereignty. We don't need no gala. We don't need about it. You know, it's the mentality. It is the subdued mentality that they have casted upon us. Where we feel like we don't need nobody to be feeding our children. We need you to move out of the way so that we can properly participate in the same institution you are participating in, so we can feed our own children. I don't need you to reap up and take the wheelbarrows of the profits in the industry that you work in and guard me out of, so you can have a gala every year to tell me you feed my children or you help in this charity. No, give us an opportunity to work and participate too. We don't need you to do it. We can do it ourselves. How we come from a resilient people to now being told and hand-fed and tell you when you must do and what you shouldn't do and when you should do it? Our forefathers that went to sea, that built this economy and built this island, where did they spinning in their grave? And now we're being labeled with this unimaginable label of being lazy and don't want to work, and I doing what the Caymanian people don't want to do. No. You doing what you want to do because you can't afford and don't want to live where you come from. That's why you here. You're not here because we don't want to work. Anyway, at the end of the day, we need to wake up. We need to wake up and we need to get this thing back on track. Believe me when I tell you. Jonathan, you still on this bridge thing? About build a bridge the right way? It ain't no right way to do the wrong thing, my friend. All right. Let me just check the comments right before I sign off now. Brawlin, Mary, we're not building any bridges in the North Sound. I agree with that. Yeah. No, I don't believe in the fairies either, Jonathan. Me and you on the same page, and not one of my friends. No fairies not gonna work around here. Anyway, so again, we gotta continue to have the conversations and these things. I travel later on in the week, but just for 2 days, and I'm back. But I'm gonna try to do the show on Wednesday, and then Friday I'll be away, and then I'm back on Saturday. But what I would like to do, starting next week, because we're gonna start, like I told you guys, and we're starting it now. I mean, you see our background. We one piece at a time. So we're gonna be doing a lot of different, segments and stuff. So we're gonna have roundtable discussion. So we'll do Friday mornings early, and then we'll do a late night Friday evening conversation, like 7 to 8, 7 to 9, roundtable discussion. Invite regular people who want to come on, express their concerns, opinions, share their ideas, and that's what we're gonna get into. And then we're gonna start taking people who want to come in and sponsor, do their own thing. They can put their ads and different things on the show, and get it out there. So that's the direction we're getting in now, and hopefully we'll have that all sorted out before the end of March. I'm hoping. We'll wait and see. Again, just want to say thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for your contribution, Jonathan. Always a pleasure having the debates with you and everybody else who contributes. And thank you for watching, and please don't forget to like and share our page, and we'll see you on Wednesday morning. Enjoy the rest of your Monday.
We got to break Sariba up. Sariba is a cartel.
We have to own our grid because we paid for it. You had it too long. That's number one. We need to control the purchasing of fuel because we pay for it. We should be in charge of buying it. The fuel companies, you better buckle up too. Jackson Point pipeline have to be reverted back to the ownership of the country. Oh, Mario, you can't tell them how to operate their business. Well, yes, we can. Having this idea that you're going to impose what's best because of what the law tells you can do will cause an uprising in this country that you've never seen before. My children are going to be saddled with the debt of a billionaire so that he can have his name printed on everything we got around here. Because let me tell you something, this is Dart Island.